Hello, welcome to CanBeWell. We are very proud today to get to know Brain Gym a little bit better, one of our partners. And I'm Natasha. I'm happy to be the host today. So just quick, some housekeeping before we start. So Lisa Markovici and Dana Lipke will be our presenters today. And I hope, Dana, I said that right because I pronounced it German. It might be wrong. So thank you. As I said, I'm your host today. I'm Natasha Polomsky, and I'm the current treasurer of CanBeWell. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge the land and introduce who's coming from where. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, let us take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to educate our own understanding of local indigenous peoples and their cultures. Can you please, and I guess that's going to be in the chat, Michelle, just correct me if I'm wrong. Can you please share your name, the indigenous land you reside upon, and how many generations your family has been present on this land? And I'm going to do that verbally so you know what we're talking about. So my example is Natasha Polomsky. It's Mi'kmaq and Maliseet people on Unamaki, or I'm from Port Hawkesbury area, Cape Breton Island, and I'm the first generation. I'm not born here. My parents are here, but we all immigrated about the same time. So Lisa, I don't know if you want to do that verbally or put it in writing. Oh, she's already at it.
I was practicing. I was practicing to do it verbally, and I appreciate that because I never really researched how to pronounce it and the language and the origin. So I really love that that sign of respect, and I'm very grateful to have learned that. So since I practiced, I come from the city of Montreal, which is Chichoke in Mohawk, or Kanian Keha, that language. But I was born in Vienna, Austria, so I've only lived on this land since 1970.
And we both try not to speak German tonight. Oh. So while we wait for everybody to finish up posting their entry, can we do maybe alternative cook-up? Or Lisa, do you have a similar exercise from Brain Gym? Do you want to do that?
Yeah, so there's a sequence we do in Brain Gym, and Dana and Sharon and Celine, they all know it very well. We call it PACE, P-A-C-E. It's a series of 4 exercises that we use to come in to the present moment and get ready for whatever comes next. So without too much theory, I would invite you all to do it with us. And just before you do it, I'm just going to invite you, because that's kind of part of Brain Gym too, just to notice perhaps your energy level, your level of really being fully engaged and present right now. Maybe even if your eyes are straining to catch what's on the screen, or even the information, is it coming at you, or are you trying to capture it? And just noticing your ease in your body, the level of tension or relaxation, just so that we can compare maybe at different levels what PACE might offer you. So on that note, I'm going to offer you tears. We'll begin with a little bit of water, if you have some. And after water, we do what's called the brain buttons in Brain Gym, where we kind of feel for the collarbone and we slide towards the sternum. If you kind of roll your shoulders in, I'll just show you on my shirt, you see the collarbone, and it's just near the sternum, that soft spot underneath the collarbone that we'd like to place our hands on. And you can just rub it gently if that feels okay. If you prefer just to hold it because there's a lot of energy there, that's fine. In energy work, it's the kidney meridian. And the other hand can just rest comfortably on your belly button. Once you've located the brain buttons, I'm going to invite you to roll your shoulders back and relax your shoulders. Relax your face, and maybe very gently begin to sweep your eyes from one side to the other. It's okay to move your head a little bit if you like, but the point is really to activate your eyes from side to side. Focusing on a nice deep breath. And again, noticing if the massage feels okay on those brain buttons, or if you'd rather just hold or maybe just tap, or maybe even just be slightly off your skin. And then when you feel that it's time, we're going to switch our hands. So the hand that was on the belly button finds the brain buttons. And maybe this time pay a little bit of attention to the way your feet meet the floor as well. This is one of the things that starts to shift when we do this exercise. And also notice what happens if you keep your head a little bit more quiet and just begin to activate your eyes very gently, if that's okay for you. If not, go ahead and move your head. No pressure. And then the third part of PACE is to begin to activate, and we can stay seated for this if you want to just do that seated for today, where we would bring the right hand to the opposite knee. And if you want to increase the range of motion, you can activate your belly button and actually bring your elbow to that opposite knee. And if you're feeling particularly energetic and courageous, you can, of course, do it standing up. But for today, if the seated position is more practical, that's fine. Just being sure to always make the movement initiate from the core. And it's not about speed. The more attention you pay to the movement and the slower you go, the more you need to kind of stabilize your body and activate those muscles deep in the core to keep you steady. So taking your time is definitely recommended here. Feeling each movement, feeling each breath. And then when you feel that you've had enough activation, you can stay standing or sitting and just cross one ankle on top of the other. So that's part of that hookup, or how you guys call it. We call it hookups. So contact at the ankles. You can simply give yourself a great big hug. Or the full movement is both hands come out front and the thumbs go down. We're going to cross one hand on top of the other so we can catch our fingertips together. And then very gently bend the elbows to bring everything close to your heart. You can relax your shoulders once you're there. Rest the tongue on the roof of your mouth behind the upper teeth. And this position allows the back to really be nice and wide and open so we can breathe right into those most remote corners of our lungs that we never get to, and just focusing on filling all of those lungs full of nice air. So all you're thinking about now is nice deep breaths. You can relax your jaw, relax your shoulders, relax your eyes. You can even close your eyes if you like. And when you feel that your heartbeat has calmed a little bit, you can uncross your feet and very gently bring your fingertips together. And then I'm just going to invite you to notice once more those same kinds of questions I asked you before. Notice your level of energy, how present you are, how ready you feel to participate in this little discussion, or are you thinking about whatever comes next? Maybe the comfort or ease in your body, and maybe the way your feet even meet the floor. So these are all just little noticing cues that we rely a lot on in Brain Gym. So thank you, Natasha. A little longer than you thought probably, but
No, perfectly fine. I love all those exercises that we can do to get us all, like bringing the group together is just one of the best parts. And we do that actually in our board meetings every time we do a goal setting and a balance so that everybody's together. So without further ado, our intention for today is to provide a platform for our partner organizations to be highlighted within our membership. As an avid member of CanBeWell, we all play a vital role in developing and sharing the power of the course, publications, tools, and techniques that our partner organizations provide to Canadians and beyond. We begin this process by introducing Lisa Marcovici, who founded Brain Gym Canada with Dana Lupke, Karen McKay, and Tanya Moulin in November 2019. Lisa comes from Quebec and is instrumental in creating a bilingual program for Brain Gym Canada. Her background and knowledge is vast, and Lisa has presented around the world with her special skills and focus. Dana, a dancer first and foremost, provides students with the experience of movement for brain integration. With over 40 years of performance with his company, Sun Ergos, Dana has been all over the world teaching and performing and inspiring people to live passionately and compassionately. CanBeWell would like to thank the two of you for creating a platform for Brain Gym in Canada and for bringing your vision forward with CanBeWell as a part of your Canadian connection plan. Sorry, I got lost. Thank you for your dedication and service to BioEnergetic Wellness globally, as well as your dedication to be present as a partner organization with CanBeWell that continues to build and develop programming for professionals in the wellness industry to learn and grow with. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be one of the partners. I think we were one of the first CanBeWell partners, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
And Natasha, our treasurer, is here too. Celine is our treasurer, just so you know.
Hi, Celine.
Must be a thing. Dana, did you want to say hi too?
Hi. Okay. So our approach today is to have a dialogue of sharing. We encourage those on the call today to keep the cameras on, but to stay muted until called upon. We are recording and will provide the link to the recording in our April newsletter, as well as on our video list for members found in the news section of the website platform. So let's get started. Lisa, let's begin by getting to know you first. Can you share some background in the training that you have, the experience that you have gathered, and the types of people that you work with?
Yeah, it's been a long journey and a fascinating one. It started 25 years ago when my son was 4 years old in pre-K, and the teacher was concerned with his abilities to follow tasks, to stay focused. She said he was in the moon a lot, and especially his physical skills, his fine motor and gross motor skills. There was a big lag between his verbal skills and his motor skills. And at that time in Quebec, there was not really much brain gym in French. Everything was coming from the States. And she said she had heard about this program, but I was in a French school in the Francophone system. And she said she's not sure, it comes from somewhere in California, but she has a feeling this might help my son. And when I heard the word brain gym, I swear I could feel like the hairs standing up on the back of my neck. I said, okay, I got to figure this thing out. I got to find it. And there are no coincidences, but that same day I picked up one of those family magazines, that they give away for free in schools. And there was this little tiny ad, no bigger than a business card, for a Brain Gym 101 class. And that teacher had never put an ad in that paper before. And that teacher had never even taught a Brain Gym 101 in Montreal before. That was in the year 2000. And it was in the November of that year. And I signed up and I took the class. And from the first day on, I started doing PACE because that's all I learned that first day with my son. And after 3 weeks of doing PACE, the teacher wanted to know which medication Alex was on because that was the school recommendation that we medicate my son. And I said, there's no medication. We're just doing PACE every day. And it truly was just that. He came home from school. We did those 4 things. That's all we had. So she said, well, come into my classroom and show me this thing. And that's how my career as an architect ended. And I started playing more professionally with Brain Gym. And the director of the school wanted me to teach Brain Gym to the whole team because all the other teachers wanted to know what was this magic thing that was going on in this kindergarten classroom. And so I said, well, I'm not licensed to teach it. I only had one course. I have to go through all the levels. She goes, finish your education and come back. And it took me 6 years to get all my classes because there was nothing in Montreal. So I had two small children. My parents were sick. And my father had Alzheimer's. My mother had colon cancer. There were 6 very intense years during which I couldn't really do much more than one course a year. But it was really thanks to Brain Gym that I managed to keep sane and take care of myself, take care of my parents, and take care of my children. And at the same time, get through some of the hardest years that I've ever known. Um, so to me, Brain Gym became a support tool first for myself, even though I was looking for help for my son and for my parents. It helped a great deal with my dad too. We had these moments of clarity and connection. And so since 2006, I'm a licensed Brain Gym consultant. Since 2015, I'm part of the international faculty. We meet from all over the world, people from China and Japan and Hungary and Germany and Italy, to figure out what the curriculum is and the programs that we add to the Brain Gym courses. I love it, and it's so international. And it kind of gave me the impetus to start something in Canada because there was no real Brain Gym Canada. We were always connected to the US. And we don't work exactly the same as the US, as CanBeWell well knows. So the dream kept on lagging behind, but then Dana started Breakthroughs Western Canada in the late 2017, 2016, roughly, I think it was. And I went to Calgary and I saw what they were doing and I got so excited. I said, yes, this is possible. Let's make it Canada wide. And so these three other crazy people, Dana, Karen, and Tanya from Toronto, agreed to join this crazy boat 3 months before COVID hit. And we opened up Brain Gym Canada, and then the world shut us down. So, it was just perfect timing. But what was interesting is that in 2018, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and then that was a whole new application of Brain Gym. And it became now kind of the machine that keeps me going because I see so many people that it helps, not just with breast cancer, but with any kind of cancer, but mostly with any kind of disease that just changes everything. And we know the human is very resistant to change, and change is very scary. And I've always loved about Brain Gym the way we can, you said the word balance, Natasha, and we can balance for being afraid. We can balance for fear. We can bring alignment back and find our feet on the ground again and be centered and resilient, which I find is exactly what the world needs now more than ever. And I see it almost like our duty as to show up that way, to make sure we're centered and grounded and give that to others. So that's my story.
I hear you. Thank you for sharing. Dana, would you like to share a little bit about your background and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, so my journey started a little bit differently. I was actually seeing a man who had been an educator as a kind of counselor in midlife when my way of being was not working very well. And I realized I needed some shifts. And I worked with him. He was helpful, but he said, my wife is doing this thing called Brain Gym. I think it might be useful to you. So I did a Brain Gym session with her, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can facilitate change through movement. Oh, that I think I can do. I mean, the thought of doing it cognitively was just kind of like a lot. So I thought, ooh, this is cool. And then a bit later, in early spring of 1989, I believe it was, I was going to go to a festival in Singapore, a performing arts festival, and do my one-man dance show. My partner was doing his one-man Shakespeare show. It was 70 minutes of dance, solo dance, that I hadn't done in over a year. And I had to relearn it. Because we were touring a lot, I had 5 days in the studio. But I discovered there was a Brain Gym teacher in Calgary who was doing Brain Gym, the first Brain Gym course at the time. And I thought, oh my God, am I going to spend 2.5 days doing Brain Gym and only have 2.5 days to learn my choreography? But so I followed my heart for once. And it was so much easier to learn all that dance, which I had to learn off an old television grainy monitor, and everything is backwards, all black and white, and just, could be very, very frustrating because it's all reversed when you're watching it. So I just kept drinking water and doing pace. And I felt when I got to Singapore that it was the best performance of my dance show that I had done at that point. So that was 1989. But while I was in Singapore, actually, this is what really turned me on, was that I was supposed to be teaching dance, but the phys ed department said, no, we don't want you teaching dance in our phys ed department. So I'm sitting in the cafeteria bubbling about Brain Gym, and this English teacher said, would you do this with my grade 8 remedial English classes? I have 2 sections. So right off the bat, having just done, Lisa, no certification, this was the first half of Brain Gym 101, the first 2-day course. I did reading balances and listening balances. The first group learned all the stuff when I got the time. To the second group, they had learned everything the first group had done because it was 2 days later. And so we did 2 balances with them. And it was just so thrilling to see all these eighth graders make a shift. And then we went to Bali for a few days of sort of cultural immersion and living on an ashram. And there was a boy who was, well, they took in orphans, and he was actually probably about 20, 19 or 20. Again, I was kind of bubbling about Brain Gym, and the woman who ran the ashram said, "Would you do this with Wayang? He's his mother has died, his father is sick, he's really having trouble learning English, which they all learned there. Could you see what you can do?" So he didn't understand much English, but that's the great thing about Brain Gym. You do it with movement. And he was just, at that time, we did it all through muscle monitoring, actually, the noticing a lot of it. And he was like right out there with his arm. It took him 21 little glasses of water to get hydrated. And I learned later that grief is really dehydrating. And so it was just, I still have the piece of paper that he wrote his balance on. So that was what got me all stirred up. And I'll just say one other little quick thing. We went to perform in Croatia, and the Balkan War started while we were there. And so I got permission from, we went home, and we went back again the next year during the war. And I got permission from Paul Dennison to oversee the publication or the translation of the Little Orange Brain Gym book into Croatian. A fifth grade English teacher there, Croatian English teacher, did it during the day. They had no electricity in the evening, so they would go to bed when it got dark. So after school, it took a whole year. And when I got back, then we had to test it all out. And then I had to find, this was back in like 92, I had to find a program that would do all the Croatian characters to type it all out. And we printed ourselves 50 copies and took them to Croatia, and I taught a workshop in Croatia during the war. So it's had a journey. My Brain Gym journey has gone around the world.
Sounds like it, yep. You already talked about Paul Dennison, so can you either Lisa or Dana share a little bit about the background and about the approach that Brain Gym offers for self-care and for clients?
Yeah, I mean, Paul Dennison was basically homeschooled. He only started speaking at the age of 9 years old. So he was thrown out of one school after the other, and his parents were basically told that it was not possible for him to attend school. So they homeschooled him, but they were owners of a puppet theater and very creative. And that creativity and that faith in their child is kind of what encouraged Paul Dennison. And he swore that when he finished school, nobody would ever have to deal with that same shame and blame that he had to face as he was growing up. So he did a thesis, a master's degree, a doctorate actually, I'm sorry, at the University of Southern California after he finished his studies in Massachusetts. And it was one of the first times that somebody actually wrote a thesis where the idea of physical skills and intelligence was uncoupled. Up until that time, if you couldn't read or you couldn't speak well, you were considered an imbecile, you were considered stupid. And our culture still kind of sees that a little bit. But his was the first one where he made a distinction between the physical abilities related to learning and the actual level of intelligence of a person. People can be brilliant, but just not have the capacity to express it. And this is what motivated him to open 15 learning centers in Southern California when he finished his doctorate. One of the offices he shared with developmental optometrists, and they taught him about some of those physical skills required for eye teaming, looking in all fields, creating access to that midfield where both ears, both hands, both eyes work together. Laterality was a big thing in the 70s, so that was a very popular item. And in Brain Gym, there's like 11 midline movements, which all focus on laterality. But Paul Dennison had the brilliance to step back and say, okay, but to build laterality, what do we actually need physically? And he was the first one to start to look at, a bit like in the movement of dance, movement is three-dimensional. It's not just about side to side, it's also about front to back and up and down. And he incorporated that into the design of Brain Gym. So we have energy exercises and deepening attitudes, which are more about the emotional up and down kind of connection. centering, feeling centered, but yet grounded enough that you can, find something new and bring it in. And then we have the lengthening activities, which focus more on the differentiation between front and back of the body, our ability to engage and lean in and then step back when it's enough. So that's our ability to focus and comprehend. And he looks at it from the physical tension, the physical aspect of what we need in order to do that. So this was the first modality to look at movement, which is why Dana was so drawn to it, in all its three dimensions and how it affects our physical, emotional, and mental well-being. And he came from the world of kinesiology. He was a Touch for Health instructor. So he took muscle checking and he took the meridians and he took some of that learning from ancient traditional Chinese medicine and brought it into a magnificent, graceful work called educational kinesthetics, which is the experience of movement.
Wonderful.
Dana,
Thank
you
you.
want to add something?
You did a beautiful job.
Don't you love partners that are so neat that they do all work for you?
Well, we're very symbiotic in that way. I mean, even
I know.
the whole BrainGymCanada Association, but Dana and I have been working together for many, many years. So
Well, I know that from Michelle and me. We do the same thing. So, how are the programs set up for Brain Gym? And what can people expect?
yeah, so this is a little bit of a difficult question, but there's definitely a structure. So you can become a licensed movement facilitator or a fully licensed brain gym consultant. The movement facilitator option was created during COVID, where courses were not so readily available and people could actually do it online. And so when you're a movement facilitator in brain gym, you learn all the 26 brain gym movements. You do take the full Brain Gym 101 course, which teaches you the balancing techniques, the 5-step process. But you, as a movement facilitator, can go out and maybe go into senior residences or rehabilitation centers and animate little 1-hour brain gym classes, a bit like what Dana was talking about in schools, perhaps. You can teach the full Brain Gym 104 course, which will teach people the 26 movements, but you cannot really see people privately or teach longer than a 6-hour workshop, for example. So a full-fledged licensed Brain Gym consultant, which is a bit of a more of a rigorous course, it's about 250 to 300 hours of courses, and then there's casework, that this person can see people privately. And there's level 100, 200, 300, 400. So we go into more advanced type of work. From the 3 dimensions, we go into 7 dimensions. We have beautiful in-depth courses created by Paul Dennison about total core repatterning and language of movement, and it just gets more and more elegant and profound as you go up in these levels, but they're not required to benefit from Brain Gym right away. So this is why there's kind of these 2 approaches, and I hope that's what you meant with that question, because
Yes.
otherwise I'm not too sure.
No, it's correct. Which leads to the next one. How can a CanBeWell member incorporate Brain Gym? Do they have to take the full class? Can they take just the facilitator and incorporate that in their class? How can they do?
So if you're just going to use it in your practice, you're not presenting yourself as a brain gym facilitator, as a brain gym instructor, you're absolutely encouraged, and please do. Like, if you guys want to share pace right now, let's do it. You don't have to be a brain gym consultant nor movement facilitator to do that, but just making sure that you say, well, this is pace. It comes from, brain gym. And I sent you guys a handout that you can share with CanBeWell members, and all the copyrights and so on are there. So that's fully shareable. You can't really charge for brain gym services, but you're just incorporating some brain gym into your private sessions. And I know the question might come up a little bit later, but I find that is the strength of brain gym today, is how it fits in with everything else. It used to be something that was presented as a standalone kind of modality, but I think Dana and I and Brain Gym Canada in general, Celine too, we've talked about this many times. Brain gym is at its finest when it's woven into something else, because like we just did pace, and then after pace you can do whatever session of whatever you want, whether it's muscle tuners or some of the other modalities that you have. Dana uses it to learn dance or to teach dance. I use it often. We have a meeting, weekly meetings with Multiple Sclerosis Association, and we get ready to do whatever it is we're doing with pace. It's just an example of, but I find that weaving it into that is really how Brain Gym shines. So I would love for CanBeWell members to start using it in whatever they do. That would be
Honestly,
absolutely
I think that's our strength with CanBeWell, that we have so many beautiful disciplines that come together. And my background is a little bit not so much from the Touch for Health side, where most of our members come from. but mine is sound, and the sound, for me, it was therapeutic touch, which will be presented soon. And then it was touch for health and the sound. And as soon as touch for health came in, all of them moved together and became a unity. So I pull off all of three of them and use the best for my client, which is the neat thing when you have multiple disciplines or knowledge of parts, the best parts of those disciplines. Let's say it this way, PACE is one of the best parts, right? So you can then go and pull out and use it in a way that you couldn't optimize for your client before, which is the strength that we have.
You also mentioned that you balance when you have your board meetings. We also kind of have them in a balanced format, but I find that's maybe universal to most modalities in the CanBeWell structure, is that 5-step process that we call a balance. Maybe we don't all have 5 steps, but we call it a balanced process, which is designed to allow the person to notice that a change has occurred, even if it's really tiny. But when you have that ability to be aware of that little tiny change, you open the door to the next little tiny change and the next little tiny change, and lo and behold, you've done, you've climbed to the top of the mountain, kind of thing. So
And
that process of feedback and becoming aware, no matter what you're doing, whether it's muscle tuners or the sound or or brain gym or yoga or whatever it is that you're doing, that awareness and that connection of brain, body, heart, I find is what makes all of our modalities so powerful.
yeah, and as you said before, you bring them into the presence. So that's the other part. We're not all frazzled and everywhere. We're grounded, we're centered, we're all together, and we're resonating, right?
Exactly.
So,
I would just add something to that. Um, and that is that I think one of the things that like all CanBeWell members would benefit from, and maybe this is something Lisa and I might think about doing, is a special course for people who are coming from other modalities and don't really want to go up through the brain gym thing. But and this is partly because of how I first learned brain gym back in '89 from my first teacher. To me, what Lisa referred to as the 5-step balance process. This structure for facilitating change is such a clear, elegant structure. And when I first took brain gym, many of the people in the class, they were neurolinguistic programming. They were involved in other modalities that I don't even remember, but many people brought other things. And we were invited immediately that those skills could be incorporated into the menu of a balance. But Brain Gym is very specific about these 5 steps build a conscious experience by the person being facilitated. What can I say? The person who's coming desiring to make some shift in their life, that creates a structure to make it very safe, but also conscious. And so I think that is Brain Gym's biggest gift in a way, is the balance structure and the teaching of noticing with clients as you go along.
Yeah.
I've gone to Touch for Health sessions, and I always set up my own balance just to make sure, because otherwise I find sometimes at the end of it, well, I feel great, but I don't really know what happened or how I've shifted. Whereas with the Brain Gym balance, I do. And Sharon's a great example of this, from one of the first Brain Gym people that I met at the conferences. And I'll never forget, Sharon, the workshop you gave on how to make any workshop or class or course a balance for everyone. So she incorporated that balance structure into just teaching a class, which was brilliant. I've used it.
I think honestly,
I teach. Anyway,
we all would benefit if we would have from our partners little tidbits and maybe videos or something like that. What would you see as a benefit, and teach our professionals, the people who are out there working with it? Because sometimes we don't see the connection between things that we learn in different classes I always had the advantage of having teachers in my life that acknowledge that and actually enhance that in me. So when I see a class or when I take a class, I can incorporate whatever I like out of the class into what I do. But some people don't see that because they're structured in their structure. And I think that's the benefits we have with CanBeWell again, when our partners come and say, oh, we have a little tiny video for you, and here's how you can incorporate into your practice, right?
And Natasha, I totally I agree. And I think that there's so many new ways that we need to show up. Like the Dana mentioned that Sharon inspired him so much. Sharon's book is what actually gave me the courage to start teaching brain gym, because up until the way she described the brain on fire and the way we can, what happens when we go into survival, I said, well, of course, that's why we need brain gym. It just made so much sense about that survival mechanism that we're all wired for. And all the modalities deal with that. We all deal with the symptoms, the consequences of stress in a body, whether it's muscular or nervous or whatever the reactions are. And until we calm that survival response, there's very little education that can happen. And I think that's pretty much the same for all modalities across the board. We just have different entry doors that we use to calm the nervous system. And we've
Yeah.
studied now also polyvagal theory and how that can be another entry door. But fundamentally, what we're doing is helping people to come out of survival. Instead of reacting to something, you can choose how you want to respond. And that is something that's never taught to our children either, nor to us. And more I find nervous systems are very fragile. They fall very quickly into that survival response, and it takes them longer and longer to come out. And so more than ever, all that we offer is so, so vitally important, especially for the little ones, especially for the ones that arrived in 2020. They had those 2-3 years of their early childhood development. They missed all of the social connections and all of that learning, the sensory motor development that should have happened when they were in isolation with masked people around them for the first years of their lives. So
I totally agree with you. Me coming out of burnout for more than 20 years, I know all about that phase. And for me, it was Touch for Health. I had heard about Brain Gym in Germany before I left, but unfortunately, I never got too much into it. So I guess I gotta be one of the ones taking class with you guys. So Michelle mentioned something about a program like a peace event that our members can be part of. I haven't heard about that, so please tell me about it.
well, it was a special event in December. It was kind of in response to Brain Gym Canada as a board. We kind of felt that this was not a kind of December that felt very festive. It didn't seem appropriate to start doing a big Christmas thing or a big of any kind of religion thing, not just Christmas, but it just felt like a solemn kind of time as we moved into Christmas, especially what was happening in the Middle East and all over the world, not just in the Middle East, but in Africa too. And it just seemed like there was so much violence going on in the world, as if we were forgotten how to be human with each other. And there was this incredible conversation that I listened to that was moderated by Bayo Akomolafe. And he held a conversation about, the title was Radical Accompaniment, where we just get together to be together. And we decided to do one of those in for Canada, for Brain Gym Canada. And Michelle came, and I think she kind of experienced it, where it wasn't about trying to shift anything or change anything. It was just to show up with whatever you were feeling and allowing it to be there. And we would sit together and just let everyone feel what they're feeling, whether it's happy or sad, share the joy, share the pain, just come together as humans in a community and radically accompany each other. And the beautiful thing was, at the same time, not exactly on the same date, but similar things happened with our sister affiliates. So Brain Gym in Germany, Renata Venegas in Dame did something similar. Celine in France, Monica in Italy, Masami in Japan, Amy Choi in China. This happened in little cells all over the world, where just humans got together just to be human together. And that was kind of our celebration of peace and of radical accompaniment. And I got to meet with Bio in February to tell him what that little conversation kind of had sparked for Brain Gym anyway. And he said that it touched him so much. He actually, we used a drawing from a 13-year-old Croatian girl, I believe she was. She won a prize. It was two hands knitting, and what she's knitting is people, and the people are all holding hands. And if one person lets go, her whole knitting falls apart. So it's kind of that we're here to hold each other up, and if one of us lets go, we're all going to fall down. So it just felt more right for that time in December. But what we decided as Brain Gym Canada is we'd probably have them 2 or 3 times a year, maybe at this change of seasons, to support each other and just come together. You have no agenda, there's no plan, there's a structure. It's a bit of a balanced structure, where we can come up and show up with whatever we want, and we leave, quietly and connected, and not necessarily healed or changed or whatever, but we just had that moment where we could share whatever it is we were going through. And Michelle can share what she felt, and Dana too, but I felt it very, very, very supportive and powerful.
Very nice. It
I
reminds
would
me a
just
little bit.
say, sorry, I would just say it was really interesting because we do come together a lot of times to do that healing component or to lead some kind of healing session, and to just be present is completely different. And it's so empowering because you're still there for compassionate reasons. And so you do ignite healing, but not in a blatant, here we are, let's use those tools way. It was lovely. Thank you.
It reminds me a little bit of holding the space, which we use in therapeutic touch, and just being there present for the other person. Working with mental health individuals, I learned quite a bit. It's more important to hold the space and just let them be as they are in their state instead of going back and forth, which was very interesting to see that.
I would just add, if I could, that also to go again to this, what Brain Gym offers. Lisa and I used the Brain Gym 5-step format to create the experience, but rather than setting it, as she said, it was totally open to bring whatever you had to it. And we created what I think was beautiful was, with a Brain Gym context, we created it in a way such that, what I mean to say is, everybody co-created the experience together. So
That's
it was not somebody leading it per se, although we had a structure, but we co-created it together. The menu, what we actually decided to do after everybody shared, was co-created. And but we set a very clear intention, and that was that people would feel heard, seen, and respected, and that they would leave, that the experience was something that they would take with them when they left, to support them going forward.
Thank you. You shared pace with membership. Is there anything else that you would like to share to give a taste of what you do, Dana or Lisa?
One of the things, we're kind of coming to the end. Is that right, Natasha? We're kind of
Yes, we're coming
close to the closing part.
close. Yeah.
So I was just thinking, and Dana, I don't know if you think of another one, but we have Brain Gym, which are the 26 movements that we talked a little bit about earlier. We also have Vision Gym. There's 32 exercises there for vision in a larger sense of the word. But we also have something called the 12 integrated movements, where each movement is connected to a meridian, which I know is many of the modalities in CanBeWell. And the heart meridian, the movement is called Give and Take. And it's all about receiving and giving. And this is kind of what we were just discussing. So we thought we could share that movement with you in closing. Everybody would like to do it together.
Awesome.
So it is all about balancing giving and taking. So as one hand is reaching out and giving something, the other hand is bringing close into you. And you just simply alternate. And you could aim at somebody on the screen, like I'm going to give something to Michelle, and I'm receiving something from Dana, and I can give something to Helga and receive from Sharon. And so you can just kind of give intentionally and receive to Celine and Jay and you, Natasha, and Sharon. And it's just a very connective, heart-filled kind of movement. We accompany that with the sound of the heart. So Natasha, you're into the sound thing, which is the So just to give you another taste.
Nice.